Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel, and this is Breathe at Home. Today, we're going to do a reflection on opposites to gain some new perspectives. So, grab a pen and paper, draw a crisscross on the page so that you have 4 quadrants to reflect in. And I want you to think about a trait. Usually, how this works best for me, it's like a trait that really annoys me about myself or a trait that annoys me about somebody else. I don't know why, but that is just I tend to get stuck in complaint when it's like somebody's doing something that I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? And so, see if you can really hone in on a trait that you want to gain some like new perspective on. So go ahead and write that trait on the top of the page. Some examples of traits that, it could be laziness, it could be aggression, fakeness, it could be closed-mindedness. There's no rules. You could even pick a trait that maybe you like hold in very high regard, that maybe you put on a pedestal that you want to just play with and gain some new perspective on. Maybe it's a trait that you see in somebody else. You're like, I really wish I was more that. And maybe you want to play with that. So go ahead and write that trait on the top of the page. And then we're going to do, hopefully it's not too confusing without me being able to like write it out in front of you. So just bear with me. In the first quadrant, I want you to write down that trait at its fullest, like most turned on state. What are the benefits of that trait to the world? What is helpful about having this trait be full on? What does the world gain by this trait being alive and active? So go ahead and, again, allow what's coming up. Don't try to think about what's right or wrong. Just truly and separates the trait from the experience or the person that you've connected it to, so that it's literally you're just holding the trait in your hands by itself, not attached to any experience or person, just the trait. Fakeness. What would be the benefit of fakeness being turned on all the way up in the world? See if you can think of the gift in this trait being turned all the way on. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to write. And if you're having any sort of trouble, I really encourage you to put a hand on your heart, take a deep breath into your belly, and see if you can come up with one way that it could be a benefit to have this trait turned way up. And then if you're ready to move on, so you can pause if you need to. Otherwise, if you're ready to move on, in the second quadrant, I want you to write down when this trait is turned all the way on, how does it hurt the world? What are the disadvantages to this trait being all the way on and alive? So basically the opposite. The trait is turned all the way on in the first quadrant. What's really great about that? What are the benefits to us? What's good? And in the second quadrant, when that trait is turned all the way on, what's bad about it? Bad. What are the disadvantages? What isn't helpful? What hurts people, things? What's hurtful about that trait when it's turned all the way on? So I'll give you about 30 seconds to just, again, intuitively allow what's coming up. And if you're noticing yourself attached to this specific person or scenario, again, put a hand on your heart and your stomach, take a breath into your belly, and see if you can really decouple the personalization to that trait and really just hold that trait objectively in your hands. When that trait is turned all the way up in the world at large, What are the disadvantages? What is not helpful? What is not good that comes from that? Okay, if you want more time, you know the drill, you can pause it. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the last two buckets. But before we do that, I want you to take the trait that you have chosen. I want you to now focus on the opposite of that trait. So if you had fakeness as your trait, the opposite would be authenticity or realness, whatever word feels like the word that you want to use as the opposite. Or laziness, maybe it's like highly productive. So just the opposite of the trait that you just played with. Write that down. So I want to give you a minute to do that. You can write it anywhere on your page. And then we're going to do the same thing. So in that opposite trait, if that opposite, the opposite of the trait is turned way up. So for fakeness, the opposite is, I'm going to say authenticity. If authenticity is turned way up, what are the benefits of that? What is the gift in that to the world? What are the advantages to the people around that? So go ahead and write that down. And we're trying to look at this from like a full pendulum swing, like fully authentic, zero fakeness in existence whatsoever. All right, if you need more time on that one, go ahead and push pause. Otherwise, let's move on to the fourth quadrant. And again, with the opposite trait turned all the way up, what are the disadvantages of that? What is harmful? What is not helpful? And using the same example, fakeness in the first two buckets, authenticity in the second two buckets. If there was zero fakeness in the world, what would be bad about that? What would be a disadvantage to a world that had no fakeness? What would be unhelpful about that? And again, don't worry about whether it's, it makes sense or you're okay with the situation. But see what's actually there. What's actually there if we allow ourselves to be in that world? The opposite of our trait, turned way up. What are the disadvantages of it? I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds. And if you need more time, go ahead and pause the video. See if maybe you can come up with one additional thing to consider. And so this practice here of playing with opposites, a lot of times we can take traits and assign good and bad to them, make them really, highly productive is good and no productive is bad. And that is one way of looking at it. And what if we gave ourselves the chance to be open to the possibility of there being more to the story? Especially if leaning into that belief structure causes you pain, it might be interesting to consider a bigger picture. And so, doing this exercise of being able to recognize the positive and negatives of both sides of the coin of a trait brings in additional information so that we're not so tied. Like, it can be easy to think that our perspective is the truth, is fact. But when we give ourselves the space to play with, like, oh, shoot, it isn't 100% all the time that being fully authentic all the time is always a good thing. Like, maybe there is a time and a place for a little bit of fakeness, even if it's just 0.0001%. And then from that place of being able to recognize where the benefit of all the different variations, we only went through 4, but imagine if you even played with, like, it was a 20-80 split. We actually have the ability in any given moment to tap into all those subtle, minute shifts, to play with the scenario at hand, to not only lean into these very, very strict black and white rules, but to say, okay, it doesn't really feel like this is serving me right now because I'm getting really upset at this other human or whatever. What is another perspective that could crack this open a little bit and allow me to have a little bit more of a new understanding or compassion or empathy? Not because I feel like I'm supposed to, but because I've actually gone through the process of recognizing for myself there can be good in any of these variations and there could be bad in any of these variations. And so therefore, if it can be good or bad, then maybe it's neither. So I like doing this one. It reminds me to not take things quite so seriously. So as you kind of take a meta view of what you have uncovered about this trait, I would love for you, if there's space wherever on your page, to just write down what you want your intention with this trait to be. Now that you've given yourself a chance to have a little bit more perspective on nuanced variations of the trait, what's your intention with this trait? What's your authentic way of living this trait? How do you intend to authentically live this trait? And if that question doesn't speak to you, you can always write down just what you want to remember from this reflection. And once you've done that, you are free to go. This is one of my favorites. It's really opened up a lot of things for me where I was in a spot of rigid thinking, and therefore from that place of rigid thinking, putting people in boxes according to that rule structure that I had created for myself. And so it allowed me to really soften some of my edges and to still value the things that were important to me, but allow there to be more space for other people to exist with their experiences too, and to not identify them as a certain thing because it didn't fit into my construct. So I hope you have a little bit of fun with it. This can be used whenever. So yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to guide you on this reflective journey. I am Rachel, and this is Breathe at Home.